Beardo Benjo.
Oh my god. Hello? Oh. Where are you taking him? You're massive. Maid of Sker, or Maid of Sker, as I was calling it for months until I actually played the game and then someone pronounced it and I felt like an absolute fool, is a brand new stealth-focused horror game from Wales Interactive, and it's one of my most anticipated horror games of this year. Now, I was lucky enough to play it to completion before release, so I wanted to bring to you a review where I quickly and concisely sum up my thoughts about the game and hopefully help you make a decision on whether you purchase it yourself. So let's dive into that now. Just a quick summary of Maid of Sker if you're not up to date on exactly what it is. In the game you play as Thomas Evans, a protagonist who's been tasked with composing a piece of music to bring to the grand reopening of Sker Hotel. Now at Sker Hotel, your long lost love Elizabeth is being held against her will, and you need to bring this piece of music to put an end to whatever evil is taking place in the hotel grounds. That's as much as I'll say without going into spoiler territory, but it is a pretty interesting story and it goes places I didn't expect it to go and shows things that I didn't expect to see. Let's dive into the review, shall we? Oh, I don't know if I want to. I don't think I want to explore this place. This isn't going to be my cup of tea. Okay, as I said, this is going to be quite a short, concise review. I'm going to touch upon the pros, the cons, the scare factor, and the length of the game. So hopefully by the end you'll have all the tools and all the information you need before you make that purchase yourself. Let's start with the good stuff. Let's jump straight into the pros. Number 1, sound design. All good horror games need good sound design, and Maid of Sker has it by the bucket load. Creaky floorboards, rattly pipes, doors opening off in the distance, footsteps. It's all so superbly put together. They clearly have taken a lot of time and care to get the sound design exactly right, and it built the tension perfectly. The sound design is just wonderful. Oh, I'm so freaked out by that. Ambient noise is great. Number 2, unique enemy design. Now, the things the enemies do in this game aren't necessarily different from many other stealth-based walking sim horror games. They walk their patrols, they do their things, they come to try and find you. But the appearance of the enemies is extremely unique. They're all kind of burlap sack-headed, nicely dressed, gentlemanly, terrifying, quiet creatures. And it's a design I haven't seen before. The closest thing I can compare it to is an army of scarecrows from Batman. That's the closest thing I've got, and honestly I appreciate a new design in a genre that's populated with scary, ring-looking ghosty girls and zombies. So yeah, the unique enemy design was a big plus for me. Scarecrow. Ugh. Number 3, a great sense of tension. This game isn't particularly scary. I wouldn't say it was out and out, in your face scary, but it does build tension exceptionally well. There were some fantastic cat and mouse chase sections, or not necessarily chases, but cat and mouse sections where you're in a room with a puzzle and you need to navigate your way around that room in such a way to avoid all the enemies also on their routes and patrols in that room. It does that kind of thing fantastically. It builds tension throughout, and it only hits you with a few jump scares when it felt right. They didn't feel tacked on, but there are a few jump scares in there. But yeah, it does a great job of building tension throughout, through sound design and through some fantastic cat and mouse chases. If I just stay low and move slow, then we Gucci. Don't cough. Don't cough because of the fire, you stupid git. Number 4, a believable world that felt lived in. Sker Hotel and its connected grounds felt like a real place I could actually go and visit. I appreciate the way they put the game together. I didn't have to use the map too much. I used it a little bit in the later game stages, but it all made sense. The way everything connected made sense, and that was nice. Quite quickly I knew that, okay, if I go through this door I'm going to be back in this corridor and da-da-da-da-da. It reminded me a lot of Resident Evil 2 Remake, whereby the more I played it, the more I kind of felt comfortable in that environment, and I knew exactly the shortest way to get to my next point of need, point of objective. It was very, very easy to navigate, and the world felt real, and I really appreciated that. Nice. Yeah, really nice looking so far. Really nice looking. I love these kind of lush foresty settings for horror games. It reminds me of quite a bit actually of the introduction to Blair Witch before it became kind of perpetually nighttime in that game. Number 5. Now this is a positive for me. It might be a negative for you, but the game's pacing felt fantastic to the point where it didn't outstay its welcome at all. Now it is essentially a walking simulator. There is no combat, it's all stealth mechanics and puzzle solving. So those games need to be a certain length in my opinion. If they roll on for too long, it feels like they're spreading the content a little bit too thin. Maid of Sker didn't do that. It knew exactly when it needed to end. When it felt like it should end, it ended, and it was paced perfectly throughout. For me, the runtime was perfect, and I will get onto the runtime a little bit later, but honestly, it didn't outstay its welcome, and it did feel perfectly paced throughout. And finally, number 6 on the pros, an interesting story. The story is something I haven't experienced in a horror game before. Doesn't sound too unique, but in a world populated by the same retreads of the same stories, it had its own unique twists and own unique things going on in it. I was engaged and interested in the story from start to finish, and in a genre that's populated with all kinds of the same thing recycled over and over again, that was quite refreshing. It's good to see an antagonist, and I won't go into it because I don't want to spoil it, that I've never seen used in a horror game before. Interesting story. Welsh folklore was a great place to pull the inspirations. I really, really enjoyed it. Hello, that looks a little bit otherworldly. Yeah. Oh! Okay. Okay, on to the cons, on to the negatives, and I'll be fair, I'll do 6 here as well so that it's nice and even. Number 1, it doesn't fully realise its stealth mechanics. The game gives you a very small set of tools to use at your disposal. Your main tool throughout this entire game is the ability to hold your breath so that enemies can't hear you if they get a little bit too close. Now that sounds fantastic on paper, but in practice it isn't utilised a huge amount. I didn't use it almost at all. There were a few occasions where enemies got a little bit too close, and when you're first tasked with using it in the tutorial sections, I used it. But it didn't really serve that much of a purpose. Once you figure out, and I'll come onto this in a minute, that you can pretty much just run past most enemies, you stop using the stealth mechanics. I just wish they'd used a few more different varied mechanics throughout the course of the game. There are cupboards that look like they should be able to be hidden in, and you can't get in them. It would be great to be able to get under the beds, kind of a la Outlast, but you can't. So really, that hold your breath mechanic is the only stealth mechanic that they give you, and it just isn't realised or used to its full potential in my opinion. It's a great mechanic, it's a great idea, but it just isn't used to the fullest of its ability. Oh, I don't like toilets. I like them in the real world because they're important and they serve a purpose, but... Okay, starting to get a vibe and an idea of how this game's going to play out. That looks like something I can hide in. Number 2. Now I said I'd come on to this. The AI is a little bit dumb. They kind of follow patrol patterns, as they do in most games. Once you've figured out their patrol patterns, they're fairly easy to outmaneuver. Every now and then, an enemy would surprise me by turning up in a room that I didn't expect them to be in, and that was nice, but I wish I'd seen more of that. I wish I'd seen more of that throughout the playtime. It's quite easy to navigate past them. The other issue is, you do quite quickly realise that if you just run past them and keep running in that direction, they eventually get bored and go back to their patrol. So it's quite easy to outmaneuver these enemies. If you're at a pinch, your health's low, and you just kind of want to get to the objective. If you play the game completely stealthy and don't want to alert them, then there's fun to be had, but it is quite easy to outmaneuver these not particularly smart, but very cool enemies. Follow it. Follow the birdie. Go. Go, go. That's it, you mindless knobheads. Okay, right, they're off. They're off that way. They're off gallivanting, so I can flip this switch. Number 3, the gameplay mechanics are quite familiar. This game doesn't necessarily break any new ground when it comes to the way it presents, the way it's played. If you've played a horror walking sim recently, whereby you explore a location to find items to open up a door that you need to go through to solve a puzzle, to get another item, to open up another door, then you've probably already played the structure of Maid of Sker. Now, I don't want to take away from its story or from its setting, because both are fantastic, but the gameplay mechanics themselves are fairly similar to almost every other horror walking simulator on the market today. So if you've played one at this point, you know exactly what you're getting into here with Maid of Sker. It just doesn't break any new ground or really dare to do anything different from those other games. Number 4, the game isn't hugely replayable. Not necessarily a bad thing. Most of these games in this genre aren't, but it's something I thought I'd make you aware of. There are 2 endings to see as far as I can work out, a good ending and a bad ending, and there's a suite of collectibles to find. Outside of that, there isn't a huge amount of reason to return to the Scare Hotel. Number 5, I wish we'd had more time with the mysterious main antagonist that I'm not going to talk about because it's genuinely interesting. Although I said the pacing felt right and the game didn't outstay its welcome, I would have liked to see a little bit more about the particular antagonist you encounter at the end, because it's very interesting, and as I say, it hasn't been seen, not by me anyway, in any other horror game before. I would have liked to learn a little bit more about its origins, find out where it's going, find out where it came from, and just spend a bit more time with that. I appreciate it wasn't the focus of the story, but it was great to have it in there, and it was nice to see something underutilized in the horror genre, and something that surprised me that I haven't seen before. So I would have liked to spend more time with that particular thing at the end of the game. Oh my god. Oh! Oh dear. Why did the lights all go off? And finally, number 6 on the cons, some of the areas, some of the environments feel a little bland. Not the rooms themselves, not the hotel itself, but the corridors and the outdoor areas do feel a little lifeless. The game overall feels very well put together and very well lived in, but the outdoors areas and the corridors that link you between the rooms that you do spend a lot of time in do feel a little bland, and I think it's down to the fact that there's not really a huge amount of interactive objects within the game. You can interact with your health pickups and your ammunition that you pick up for an item that allows you to stun the enemies, but outside of that you can't look in bookshelves or cupboards or drawers or really interact with anything. You can't turn on lamps, you can't turn on light switches. So when you're running down the same corridors constantly to back and forth from rooms, or you're running through the hedge mazes outside, it can feel a little bit bland because there's not a lot to kind of catch the eye. It's just bushes, 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 or paintings, paintings, paintings. And it's a little bit of a bland backdrop for certain sections of the game. Okay, that was my pros and cons. Now onto the fun part, scare factor. How scary is Maid of Sker? It's a personal thing. For me personally, this game wasn't that scary. It did a great job when it came to building tension and building suspense, but it didn't really nail the scares. I wouldn't call it an out-and-out scary game. It isn't as scary as something like Outlast or Outlast 2. It really is more tension building. Over my playtime, I had 4 jump scares. 2 were scripted events that made me jump, which felt earned, they didn't feel cheap or tacked on. And then the other scares I had were scares that I imposed upon myself. I was running a bit too quickly to get away from something, and then I ran into a mannequin or something that I thought was real, and that made me jump, and I scared myself. So 4 jump scares in the runtime of the game. I don't think it was particularly scary. If you're not a huge horror fan, I think you'll be fine to get through this game as long as you can cope with the cat and mouse sections and sneaking past the enemies. I think you'll be fine. It's not out and out scary. It isn't going to terrify you. Personally, that's my belief. It isn't the scariest game I've played. I genuinely think most people should be able to get through this. Yeah, this is a tight corridor. Hold breath. How long can you hold your breath? Okay, what about the length? How long is it? Well, it took me 3 hours and 45 minutes on my first playthrough to clock the game. Now I think that's pretty average. I didn't get all the collectibles, but I got most of the collectibles, so that will have added some time on. And I also went for the good ending, which requires you to go and collect some extra things, which again would have tacked some time on. If you're a quick player and you don't do that stuff, you can probably get through the game in maybe 2.5 hours, maybe 3. And if you really go for it and try and get all the collectibles, you might bump your time up to maybe 4.5 hours. But I think somewhere in that region, between 2.5 to 4.5, is going to be the average play time for most players. And what does that all mean for value? Well, Maid of Sker is currently £17.99 English pounds on Steam. I'd say that's about right. The quality of the package, given that it's not a AAA release, they're a smaller studio, is overall very, very good. It's well presented. The performance was fantastic for me on PC. It maintained a pretty stable 140 to 130 frames per second throughout my entire playthrough. The game looked great. It didn't look AAA quality, but it looked great. It looked like a believable world that I wanted to explore. It sounded wonderful, and I encountered no graphical glitches or no bugs throughout my entire journey. So for £17.99, although it's a short experience, it's a concise one, it's a tight one. It tells its story and then it wraps it up. I think £17.99 is a reasonable price for this game. I think if it was any more, might be on the fence, but £17.99 right now feels like a great price to pick it up and explore this world.
Dearest Thomas, these are not words I wish to write. My father has learned of our plans, my love. Yet there is more, far worse, that I wish you to understand, but I fear you may believe me taken with madness. My father seeks to use me, as I have come to believe he used my poor mother. He wishes me to sing for him as she did, to become the star attraction that will draw good folk to this accursed spit of land. My refusal to do so has led to my confinement here at Sker Hotel. I cannot explain further, but ask that you trust me.
And that brings me to the end of my review. I hope you've enjoyed this. What do you think? Do you think you're going to pick up Maid of Sker? Do you think you're going to wait and pick it up on a sale? Let me know in the comments down below. It'd be great to have a conversation with you. I have also put up a playthrough. I will be dropping that out in parts. Part 1 is up on my channel now. It's the first hour of the game. If you're unsure after this review, maybe watch 20 minutes of that. Maybe watch the full hour. It's entirely up to you. But make that decision yourself. I really enjoyed the game. It did have some flaws, as every game does. Above all else, I would have loved to see a few more mechanics in terms of the stealth. I would have liked to hide in things. I would have liked to get under a bed and let my assailants creep by. I know they're kind of overused in many horror games at the moment, but I enjoy them, and it kind of elevates those cat and mouse sections and gives you some more options. That's the only thing I really truly would have loved above all the cons. If they'd given me that, it would have made the experience just that much better. But overall, I did enjoy Maid of Sker. I do recommend it to horror fans. Pick it up while it's £17.99. It's an introductory offer. I think the price is going to go up. I hope I've helped some people make a decision today. If you're still on the fence, please do watch my playthrough. Part 1 is up now. You get to see the game running on PC at highest settings, so you'll get an idea of what the game's like. You don't have to watch it all, but it will give you a good idea of what kind of structure the game takes. I hope you've enjoyed, guys. I'll see you soon for another one. Take care of yourselves.